Hello, I'm Stefan Priebe. I'm Professor of Social and Community Psychiatry at Queen Mary University of London, and I'm going to present Dialogue Plus to you. What is the background? The background is that on the whole world, millions of patients have routine meetings every day with mental health professionals. And what happens in these meetings? Clinicians try to establish a good relationship, to monitor symptoms, to prescribe treatments, or possibly to refer patients to specialized treatments. But before Dialogue Plus was designed, there hadn't been any model to turn these meetings into therapeutically effective interventions in themselves. So that was our ambition, to make routine meetings every day into something therapeutically effective. It all started with these questions. How satisfied are you with 8 life domains: mental health, physical health, job situation, accommodation, leisure activities, partner, family, friendships, and personal safety, and 3 treatment aspects: medication, practical help, meeting with clinicians. These items were not selected because they would address every single problem that one might have in life. But research has shown that patients usually manage to raise any concerns they have got, triggered by these 11 questions. For example, you can see there's no question specifically on finances, although that's a very important area of life to many of us. However, it has been shown that patients, if they are concerned about their financial situation, would raise that, for example, on a job situation, because they may not have one, or leisure activities because they may not be able to afford them, or because there has been some trouble about that with their partner. These questions are rated between 1, totally dissatisfied, to 7, totally satisfied. They were used in a randomized controlled trial at the beginning of routine meetings between patients and clinicians in community mental health care, with more than 500 patients in 6 European countries, and on average it was used only 4 times within that year, so in 4 meetings. Still, it did significantly improve quality of life, and you might say, no, yeah, that's not very much, but it's actually a very high hurdle to take. Drug companies would love to have a drug where they could say this improves quality of life, but they simply don't. So in research, improving patients' quality of life significantly is important. However, the effect size was small, so it did make a difference worth having, but the difference was relatively small. And we wondered why that was. And it probably was because we didn't equip clinicians with any guide about what they should do if the patients raised a concern. For instance, if patients said, I'm so dissatisfied with my accommodation, well, possible that the clinician said, I'm really sorry to hear that, but what can I do? So we needed a guide, and that is the plus. The scale is just a dialogue scale, but the dialogue plus is the interventions that follows, and it is based on quality of life research, on concepts of patient-centered communication, IT developments, and solution-focused therapy. And it works like this. It starts with an app that is usually on a tablet, although it can also be used on any other device. But a tablet has the advantage that it can be passed to and fro. If the patient prefers to fill in everything themselves, they can do that. If they prefer you to do that, they can ask you to do it. But you can both look at it, but you can also put it away. It's not like a computer screen where the clinician and the patient may both sit cheek to cheek, look at the computer instead of each other. On the tablet or any other device, there is a screen, and patients then fill in these 11 questions. These questions are to be filled in as patients understand them. They don't have a very specific definition. So patients may be very happy with the friends they have got, but unhappy that they don't have more than it is what is important for them right now, the quality with that, or the lack of other friends, or a mixture. Job situation, it's either I'm satisfied with the job I have, or I'm dissatisfied with the fact that I don't have a job. It's the same about partner, that I don't have a partner, friendships, that I may or may not have friendships. Person safety, again, is an overall understanding of how safe I feel where I live. Clinicians are not meant to define these questions for patients. Patients should fill them in as I understand them. The meetings are the meetings with clinicians in the given service. Dialog Plus is really used at the very, very first meeting. So usually there have been other meetings before. So it's a meeting with the clinicians. The medication is obvious, and the practical help is everything else that the service may provide. Once patients have filled that in, there's an overview. And this is already a first therapeutic step, because it would be interesting even for us to see where are we in our life, where are our strengths, where are our weaknesses, what is good, what are we unhappy with. So in this situation, the patient is very unhappy with the job situation, medication, but very satisfied with partnership and family. The reason, just in love with a new partner, over the moon, everything fantastic. Once that has been done, one can compare with any previous meeting, last month, 6 months ago, 2 years ago. And only once that has been done, the patient decides, what do I want to talk about today? Never more than 3 areas. On average, patients don't choose more than 1 or 2. It is usually the areas that patients are unhappy with, but it could be also an area that they are happy with. So I just mentioned the full satisfaction with partnership, new love, but because of that, I may be concerned now that the subject of children may come up sooner or later, and I'm a bit worried how to respond to that. If it is a first meeting, the decision has to be taken without any comparison. So the patient has decided what areas to talk about, and each one is then addressed in a 4-step approach. The 4-step approach is shown again on the display with an eye icon, and when I click on that, and then there will be 1 page explaining what it means with some examples, just in case one has forgotten. So the patient was very unhappy with the medication. Why was that? Now, because I'm tired all day, and with these side effects, they drive me crazy. I sleep during the day, and with this tiredness, I couldn't do anything useful. Okay, but it is a 2, not a 1. Even if it was a 1, you still managed to come here. So what is still working? Now, yeah, voices are not really troubling anymore, and I've stayed out of hospital for more than 9 months now, so that is good. Step 2, looking forward. The best case scenario. So what would take you from the 2 to a 7? Now, the best case scenario would be if, like anyone else, I could live without medication, don't have to think about pills, and are naturally without any side effects. Good, that's something we can work towards, but unlikely something that we could achieve within 1 or 2 months. So what would be the smallest improvement? An improvement that here takes you from a 2 to a 3. Still dissatisfied, but less dissatisfied than today. So intangible, but small improvement. So that would be if I could stay up all day. So if I wouldn't have to go to bed during the day, that at least then I could consider taking up some work somewhere or so. Good. What can you do? Now, I could put my alarm clock at 9:00 p.m. so that I take all medication before I go to bed and sleep off most of the side effects. Good. What can I do? If I'm a psychiatrist, I could possibly prescribe a bit less. If I'm not a psychiatrist, I can ask the psychiatrist to prescribe a bit less. What can others do? There's a friend who lives with me. He could take me out for a walk or do a board game after lunch when I'm the most tired, and when the temptation to go to bed is the most difficult one, so that I stay up then and don't sleep. Okay, once that has been done, one agrees on actions until the last time, and those actions are revised at the beginning of the next meeting, not as type of homework, just as an idea about where to go. So that was a treatment aspect. The patient also was dissatisfied with their job situation. It was a 2. So why is that? Now, because I don't have any job. Good, but what is still working? So why not a 1? Recently I felt maybe I could give it a go. I feel ready to it again, whilst a few months ago I thought it was out of reach. Step 2, looking forward, what's the best case scenario? 7. Now that would be regular paid employment, possibly not full-time. I don't know whether I've got that in me anymore, but a part-time job, regular job. Okay, what's the smallest improvement? 2 to 3. So that would, if I'm still unhappy, that means I don't have a job, but at least that I would apply, that I'm in the game, that I'm realistically 1 step closer. Okay, what can you do? And I could dig out my CV and brush it up so that I can apply somewhere. What can I do? Now, I could possibly refer you to Working Well or one of these organizations that have information about how to get jobs and how to get into work. What can others do? Now, I have a friend who does voluntary gardening several times a week. Maybe I can ask him whether I can come along 2 or 3 times just to see how it is going and how I feel with working. Okay. And then we agree on actions. And again, they are revised at the beginning of the next meeting. We use that approach, that dialogue plus intervention, in another trial. And important here is that it was compared against an active control. That is important because often in research has criticized that if we test a new intervention against treatment as usual, so nothing special, it is trivial that we find a positive result. So here the control group also had a shiny new iPad. They also rated their quality of life and treatment satisfaction, but at the end of session, so that it could not influence the dialogue with the clinician anymore, but the additional attention, the technology, enthusiasm, all that was controlled for. We intervened over a 6-month period, and outcomes were assessed at baseline, 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. And the results were that patients in the intervention group had a better quality of life throughout. So already after 3 months, but still after a year. So 6 months after the intervention had ended. The effect size, the actual benefit for patients was at least as large as for cognitive behavior therapy. And this is something to consider for a moment. So even if we persuade the patient to go to CBT treatment, even if they arrive there and sees a psychologist, and the psychologist spends a few sessions with the patients, the effect size, the benefit for the patient is not larger than what clinicians can achieve in everyday routine meetings. Patients in the intervention group also had lower levels of general symptoms throughout. And after a year, their objective social situation, that means if they really had work, if they really lived independently, if they really had a partner, was better. Why only after a year? Yeah, at least in East London, it takes quite a while to arrange new accommodation if you want to change that. So that is a long-term affair. And if all that wasn't enough, it wasn't just cost effective, it saved costs. So it was cheaper doing it than not doing it, mainly because it didn't take up much more time, if any, and patient intervention group had fewer hospitalizations and needs for other treatments. Some patient experiences. The questions made me look and reflect on my life. I'd never addressed some of the issues that I came across here. Or you start improving yourself because you're aware of it now. It made me realize what I needed to do. Or it was more structured, more professional, more focused. Constructive things were being done about certain issues. And the clinician experience, I was structured. It was easy for them also to follow what we were talking about. I got so much more information out of it. I found it's the most empowering tool in the 10 years I've been qualified as a clinician by far. It definitely changed our therapeutic relationship. By the end, really, he was very, very much in control of his own care. If as a researcher, one has a result like this, it's a highlight, it's celebration, it's enthusiasm, and a great moment. However, one still needs to think, why is that possible? How can such a simple, relatively limited intervention have such an effect? There are several explanations that are not mutually exclusive. One is it addresses patient concerns. We can teach clinicians to communicate in a patient-centered way. Whether that changes behavior, we never know. This here ensures that every clinician will address patient concerns. There's no way to avoid it. There's no need at the end of the treatment. And did we address everything? Anything else really important? No. It has been addressed, and even better, the second or third time when you take out the tablet or start the dialogue plus intervention, the patient will already know my concerns will be addressed today. Second explanation. We often tend in mental health care to look for explanations, causes. How is it possible that you arrived here, and why are you so depressed? This is forward-looking. It looks for solutions. It looks for ways out of the situation, even if the steps may be very small. Third explanation, it helps with communication. Communication is at the heart of what we do, but still, as clinicians, we are arguably not very well trained. We're certainly not consistently supervised, and sometimes we struggle. GPs, some GPs like Dialog Plus a lot, not necessarily for the benefit for the patient, although that's of course very welcome, but because it helps them to overcome their own helplessness. So if the patient comes with a repeated complaint, oh, with my partner, that's unbearable and terrible situation, that again. But here, okay, best case scenario, smallest step forward. So it disentangles the situation and helps both clinician and patient to get out of their helplessness. And finally, it empowers patients. There's research on conventional CPAs, and that has shown that in a normal CPA, 8% of the actions that everyone agrees on at the end are for the patient, whilst 92% of the actions are for clinicians or social workers, everyone else. Here, 65% of actions are for the patient. And I think it is plausible that that can be helpful, because as clinicians, we can persuade, bully, cajole patients into doing something. Only they can go out and make friends. Only they can go out and look for work and change their life. If one uses Dialog Plus, it comes with a few advantages, because it provides an assessment, the 11 items, the planning, the actions, the intervention, which I have just tried to explain, and the evaluation, because of the repeated assessments in one procedure. And even better, it provides all that without survey fatigue or without having to ask patients for any additional input. So would you mind filling in the scale? Now you already have the data for everyone. No lack of responses. It has clear core principles, and the manual is intentionally brief. You may have seen the manual of more sophisticated psychological treatments like CBT, and they're often like a telephone directory, and they create what is called in research the compliance culture. So you think, oh, that is clever, and what should I do now in session 7? And yeah, that's very, very high ambition to do that very well. Here, the principles that I've just explained to you need to be stuck to, but that's it. And I want clinicians to go away from training saying not, oh, that's difficult. I want them to say, I can do that. With my personality, my style, my way of communicating, I can do that. There's a great flexibility in sessions and applications. It has been used in short-term treatment. So in a home treatment team, it may be more important the initial assessments and planning so that you know what to do from the very beginning. In long-term treatment, it's more to keep the patient-centered focus. So it has different advantages. But you can, if you're short of time, then you can say, I'm sorry, but today we can address only one area. That is all right. It can be used flexibly, and the application, it has been used in very different groups and in very different settings. It has been tested in more than 18 countries, more than 8 controlled and non-controlled trials, all of them showing benefits for patients, which is unusual. And it has been used with patients with different mental disorders, psychosis, depression, anxiety disorders, physical disorders, chronic physical disorders, diabetes. And it is supported by freely available support. So there's a generic technology for all platforms and devices, a progressive website application, which you can download on any device that you have got. There's a manual, again, relatively brief. There's an adherence scale. There's background information and publications. They brief information videos, so much briefer than this, if you want just to show the idea of Dialog Plus within your service or your organization. And there are some for national and for global health contexts. And all information is available on this website. Thank you very much.